Mashed potatoes are probably the most popular side dish on the table during the holidays and really all throughout the year, here in America at least. And of course I have no way on proving that, but it definitely sounds right. Doesn't it sound right? Yeah. And in a world filled with mashed potato videos, I wanted to share not only one, but two different techniques that are going to yield you delicious and totally different styles of mashed potatoes. The first technique is going to be a little more refined. It's going to be an actual puree, sort of like a French-inspired Pomme puree. And a puree really just means that the end result's gonna be a little finer, creamier, smoother when kind of compared to a classic American, fluffy, sometimes a little lumpy mashed potato, which isn't necessarily better or worse, it's just different. The second mash is going to be a lot more rustic, super simple to just slap together in a pinch. It's always a crowd pleaser. Also, if you prefer a mixture of sort of smooth and lumpy textures, this second rustic mash is definitely going to be right up your alley. Park to the left. But before we dig into all this, I do want to share some pretty important information regarding potatoes. I think you're going to find it useful, so let's nerd out about potatoes for a second. So in the potato universe, you could kind of think of potatoes as being on a spectrum. That is, on one side you have low moisture and high starch, then on the other side, high starch, low moisture, and in the middle, properties vary. Okay, so I don't have any to show you here, but on this side, you can think of this being the high moisture, low starch potato. These would be baby new potatoes, the small potatoes, a lot of red styled potatoes that you're gonna see. They're gonna be high in moisture, low in starch, which means they're basically gonna hold their shape when they're cooked. So they're really great for boiling and steaming, chilling down, putting in salads. They're not gonna fall apart on you. This is somewhere in the middle. This is the Yukon Gold family. There's a couple more different varieties that are medium starch, medium moisture. This is kind of gonna be just your all around general purpose potato. Whereas on this side, you got your russets, which is low moisture, high starch. These are gonna be a lot fluffier and sort of drier when they're cooked. They're pretty famous for roasting, as you've probably seen. Let's start with the puree because it takes longer. Different chefs prefer different potatoes for different styles of mashed potatoes. While it's probably most popular to choose Yukon Gold potatoes for making a Pomme puree, just for their color, texture, and their medium starch content, I really like to use a classic russet, so that's what we're gonna be using today. Some chefs think russets can be too pale, but I really like the white look. You know, pale things can be cool too. And for those who don't get the joke, I myself am legendarily pale. It's important that you try to keep them uniform size so that they cook evenly. So sometimes you get some misshapen ones kind of like this. Just do your best to try to keep them into uniform sizes, right? So maybe since this one goes, I'm gonna cut this a little thinner. As you cut each potato, remember to place it in cold water. The water is gonna help them keep from oxidizing and turning pink and brown on you. If you forget this step, you could have a gnarly looking puree. No bueno. Remember, we're using russets here, which are high in starch. So we're gonna remove some of this starch by rinsing the taters in cold water for 20 seconds or so. This pre-wash is gonna help the potatoes keep from turning gummy, which can happen if too much starch is released from the potato. Once rinsed, pour the starchy water out and refill the pot with cold water. Fill the pot until the potatoes are covered by 2 inches, then season the water with salt, kind of like you would pasta cooking water. Be generous with the salt. This is a great opportunity to start working flavor into the taters. You're gonna wanna bring the potatoes up to a boil, then reduce to a simmer and cook until they're tender. While the potatoes simmer, prepare le crème mixture. Add 1.5 cups of heavy cream and 1 cup of whole milk into a saucepan. Give it a mix, then set it over low heat to warm through. The dairy's not going to need more than 5 or 10 minutes, so do this when the taters are about to come out of the water. If the cream mixture starts to boil, cut the heat. We just need to make sure that it stays warm for the next step. After 40 minutes to an hour or so, the taters should be tendy and ready to smash. You'll know if the potatoes are ready if a knife or a cake tester can slide easily through the potato with no resistance. And that's the key. You should not feel any pushback from the potato. Let them simmer until they pass the test. Remove the potatoes from the water and let them dry on a wire rack for a few minutes. This step is going to allow any surface moisture to evaporate off of the hot potatoes. Alright, for this next step, we're going to need a couple special tools. This is a potato ricer. Just think of it as sort of an XL version of a garlic press, but for potatoes. It's got a metal hopper lined with a bunch of small holes and uses a lever action to push the potatoes through, leaving us with fine extruded potatoes with few lumps. Next up is our fine mesh drum sieve, also called a tamis in many kitchens. As you can see, the mesh is super fine. First, we're gonna run the cooked potatoes through the ricer. Make sure to do this over a large, high-sided bowl or pot if you can. It just makes the next step easier. Do not use a blender or a food processor for this step. You know, overworking the potatoes can release starch, which can make your potatoes gummy and sticky. Once all the russets have been riced, you'll be left with a bucket of stringy potatoes and shredded forearms, completely diced. It's time to start working fat into the mix. Set the cubed butter in the warmed cream mixture next to the pot and at the ready. And yeah, we're going to need a lot of butter for this, like 3 sticks cut into small cubes at room temperature. But before you freak out, just remember, this is special occasion food. You're really only going to munch this once or twice per year, so give it a rest, Karen. Incrementally work the butter into the potatoes until it's all used up. Once the butter is worked in, move on to the warm dairy, which should be just steaming. And it's at this point that I usually trade in my rubber spatch for a whisk. Same thing as the butter, add the cream in quarter cup increments and whisk until all the liquid is worked in. So one reason I really like russets for this application is because their low moisture content allows them to absorb a ton of fat and liquid, so you could really work a lot of flavor into these things, something a high moisture, waxy potato just, couldn't achieve. Once the cream and butter is worked into the potatoes, things should be very smooth, but they could be smoother. Which is why we're going to do one final pass through a temi. Alright, so this step is optional, but doing so ensures a mega silky puree, and also your family's love at the dinner table. Use a plastic bench scraper or similar tool to incrementally press the potatoes through the sieve and into a large bowl. See those little specks of darkness? Those are actually little starchy potato granules that would otherwise make the puree a tiny bit lumpy. They shall perish. The twice passed patartars should look something like this, goopy and gorgy. At this point, my potatoes got a little cold, so I added them back to the Dutch oven over low heat. Okay, rounding third base here, it's time to make some final adjustments to the seasoning. I'm going to grate in some fresh nutmeg, and this is a nutmeg seed. Just use a microplane to grate it in, or, you can use pre-ground stuff. And this is white pepper. The difference is black pepper is dried out as soon as it's picked, which turns the skin black and shriveled, while white pepper is made from first soaking the berry, which sheds their outer layer, exposing the white, smooth interior. Yes, pepper is actually a berry, and white pepper is just a bit sharper and brighter than black pepper, but, feel free to season the potatoes with whatever you want. This is your show. Of course, don't forget to season with salt and give it all a mix. The final puree should be extremely smooth like so. Cascade the luxurious puree into your container of choice. Don't do that. I like to smooth the puree in a cool zigzag design with a rubber spatula. In my opinion, the only thing these potatoes need other than its seasoning is a nice pinch of finely cut chives. Alright, that butter bomb is wrapped up. Let's move on. For the rustic mash, I'm going to infuse the cream. Add half a cup of whole milk and half a cup of heavy cream to a saucepan. Then in go our hearty winter herbs, a few sprigs of rosemary, thyme, and sage, 8 to 10 cloves of garlic, or just cut a whole head in half horizontally and throw that in. Give it a stir and set it on the back burner over low heat until we need it, kind of like last time. I already have a pot of unpeeled Yukon Gold potatoes simmering, which should be done very soon.
Yukon Gold.
Same thing as last time, simmer the taters until you can pierce them with a knife with no resistance, then set them out on a rack to dry off for a few minutes. Just look at those pretty yellow darlings. Save yourself the extra dishes and just pour out the potato cooking water and pop the potatoes right back inside. We're just gonna mash them right here in the Dutch oven. Once steaming, strain the cream mixture and set it at the ready. So we will not be peeling our potatoes for this mash. Rustic, remember? Yukon Gold skin is thin, delicious, and nutritious, so just leave it on. Now, use a hand masher or a couple of large forks to smash the potatoes down, then begin introducing 1.5 sticks or 12 tablespoons of cubed, room temperature unsalted butter. I also like to add a quarter cup of olive oil because I think the flavor goes really nice with the Yukon Golds. Once all the fat is incorporated, in with the herb-infused cream, and like last time, add it incrementally until it's all used up. I like to finish this off with a bunch of cracked pepper and a bunch of salt. Can't forget a handful of fresh chopped parsley and some leftover chives from the puree that we made earlier. Then give that all a nice mixy with a rubber spatula. As you can see, this second mash is actually more of a mash than our potato puree. Once everything is worked in, taste and adjust for seasoning as needed. Looks like I needed a lot more seasoning there. Then into a serving container and garnish with whatever else you want. I'm doing more black pepper, some parsley, and olive oil. Et voila, rustic as fork mashed potatoes. Side by side, you can really see the contrast in color and texture. The puree is a lot creamier with its whipped peaks and pale color, just looks a little more refined and clean, while the gorgeous yellow flesh of the Yukon Golds really shines through with the lumpy, fluffy rustic mash. There's a nice little family portrait of the brothers. And the vid would not be complete without a taste test. And for that, I had to call in the expert. Luckily, I live with one. Yep, those are winners. I think it's super cool how just, a simple ingredient can be changed and transformed into so many different things simply by tweaking the technique a bit. The humble potato is mighty indeed. And if you dug this video, I invite you to follow me over on my Instagram and my TikTok. I make a lot of, more quicker, short form, more ADD videos than we do here. Anyways, thank you so much for wasting your time with me, and I shall see your beautiful face next week. Farewell, friend.